In the previous episode, some kind of narcissism was present in the character of Maksymovych. We can see this character feature in many of his works. Together with his friends, he founded the organization Garden of Gods, where the ancient world was a cult.
Де культом була античність.
His first personal exhibition, in which he placed great hopes, was arranged very quickly. Maksymovych lusted for success and money for his works. Unfortunately, his exhibition didn't evoke the delight he had expected. He thought art experts would come and admire his work. The National Art Museum of Ukraine. Founded during the era of Russian Tsars, it was headed by 8 leaders of the Soviet Union and survived 3 revolutions and 2 wars. The same could not be said about its museum exhibits. Many of them disappeared during the October Revolution. Even more during World War II. The constant danger for the museum collections was even present during the times of peace. In 1926, new works are delivered to the all-Ukrainian Taras Shevchenko Historical Museum. Fedor Ernest brought paintings by Ukrainian artist-modernist Maksymovych from Moscow. The artist had died 12 years earlier. Maksymovych committed suicide. Nadia Nikolaeva, a close friend of his, preserved the works of the artist. Having met with the woman and learnt about the paintings, Ernest bought the collection immediately, as he had some hopes for those paintings. He was sure he had discovered a newborn painter of the Ukrainian modernism movement. Unfortunately, the paintings were never exhibited.
Тому що творчість цього художника, модерніста, а це було мистецтво буржуазне.
The works of the artist, a modernist, were a kind of bourgeoisie art for the Soviet Union, so their display at exhibitions was banned. His paintings were sent to museum funds. In fact, this meant they were actually relegated to the dustbin of history in a basement in Soviet times. They were doomed for slow and eventual deterioration. However, even oblivion in museums was a luxury for some paintings. The masterpieces by Maksymovych were on this list.
Для влади це були твори, які мали дуже малого художнього.
These works had very low artistic value for the authorities. They were destined to be destroyed. The Soviet authorities decided to burn the works near Moscow.
І там їх спалити, зруйнувати взагалі.
A great danger appeared for Ukrainian museums in the 1930s. 3 of them, among others, were announced as the hubs of national forces. When the cleansing of personnel began, Ernest was branded as an ungracious boon. Ernest was arrested in 1933. He was sent to exile in Bashkiria. During World War II, being German by origin, he was arrested for the 2nd time and executed. The Bolsheviks erased the intelligentsia and their artwork heritage from Ukrainian land. They blatantly and impudently robbed Ukrainian museums and sold their exhibits. thousands of works faced the threat of destruction or being sent to private collections. Only a miracle and the ingenuity of a museum worker saved a whole host of the masterpieces. Employees of the Kyiv State Museum of Ukrainian Art at the time divided the collection of museum masterpieces into 5 categories. The works of Maksymovych and repressed artists were listed in Category 0, which had the lowest artistic value.
Вони були без підрамків, без рам, вони намотані були на вали.
The paintings were without frames. They were wound up into shafts or placed in some unnoticeable corner, and nobody even thought to unravel these works and have a look at them.
Що там?
І завдяки тому, що вони потрапили до нульового.
The Ministry of Culture didn't conduct an audit of the special fund. That's the only reason they survived until the 1990s, when it was finally possible to put them on exhibit in our museum.
Можна було вже показати їх в експозиції нашого музею.
The ban on works of Ukrainian artists was lifted after the collapse of the Soviet Union. Ukrainian masterpieces were taken from museum basements. The paintings of Maksymovych were among them.
Була проведена велика робота реставрації.
Restorers did great work. The paintings were restored, cleaned, and fixed. New frames were made especially for them. Needless to say, it wasn't easy to restore the works of Maksymovych, even clearing the dust of decades and having undergone restoration under the instruments of restorers. These paintings still bear the traces of this horrific era.
А якщо придивитись уважно, якщо світло падає,
If you look with a scrupulous eye under a light, some scratches and scruffs can still be seen on the works of the Ukrainian artist.
сліди, скажімо так, деякі потертості. Мені здається, це така навіть
But
привабливість.
in my opinion, this is some kind of attractiveness as they indicate the period when they were painted. Maksymovych is called the Ukrainian Beardsley because his style is indeed very reminiscent of the master of this English graphic art, Aubrey Beardsley.
І це ми бачимо багатьох його картин.
We can see it in many of his paintings. It's black and white colors, a specific ornament similar to the work of the English master.
На творчості художника мав вплив, як бачимо.
But the artist did not just copy his English colleague. On the contrary, he developed his own distinctive, unique, and recognized style. His works are so inimitable that even American art connoisseurs, among them John Bolt, gave high regard for the artist's work. The works of Maksymovych are unique, not only by their technique and mastery. They are prophetic.
Навіть в цьому автопортреті це відчувається.
There are certain elements in the self-portrait.
Такі елементи, деталі.
Skulls, crosses. Probably the artist knew about his early death.
Таку ранню смерть.
Не знаю, може це людині талановитий так.
It's difficult to say what influenced the works of the talented painter. His way of life, visions of the future. It's simply hard to tell.
Так от бачив щось, що буде далі. Важко сказати.
Maksymovych predicted not only his own death, he had predicted terrible events which happened in Ukraine and in the world. Youth of the times felt all those imminent tragic events. They predicted World War I, revolutions.
Революції відчували.
Як то кажуть, в повітрі вже щось таке вітало, а
As they say, something thick was hanging in the air, and people of the arts felt such subtleties in the spiritual nature.
дуже тонко відчували.
Remarkably, 100 years after the death of the painter from Poltava, he heralded yet another revolution, this time the revolution of dignity.
В нашому музеї у грудні місяці
An exhibition, Ukrainian line of Art Nouveau, was opened in our museum in December 2013.
Українська лінія модерну. Виставка
Works were brought from many regional museums of Ukraine.
багатьох обласних музеїв України.
Але акцент зробили саме на...
But the emphasis was made on Maksymovych. His paintings opened the exhibition. They were the first thing the museum visitors saw.
Відвідувачів музею це була створена Максимовича. І
And what is very interesting is a lot of visitors gathered on that day when Euromaidan events began. Everything was thundering, everything was burning, and everything started to happen.
почались події на Майдані. Тобто вже тут все.
So it was quiet in the museum behind closed doors, where visitors were listening about Art Nouveau, about Maksymovych.
Розказувала про модерн, про Максимовича саме в той час.
And when the people opened the doors, they got entangled in the boisterous musical event on the Maidan.
Ребята, кто не медики, спуститесь, нам работать надо.
The exhibition was closed in the period of active clashes on Maidan. Not only visitors, but even employees couldn't get inside the museum.
Коли вже більш-менш ми змогли теж
Later, the museum was opened again to the public for visitors. We were able to return to work and the exhibitions were revived.
і на неї вже пішли глядачі.
Не можу пояснити, чому так сталося. Може, всьому так.
I can't explain why this happened. Probably there's some magic. Perhaps there's something about this artist. But we'd like to have his pictures on our walls and peace outside them.
Було все спокійно.
It took us almost 100 years to start appreciating the great Ukrainian art modernist, Vsevolod Maksymovych. Apparently, people were simply not ready for his work back in the times in which he lived and created masterpieces of art.
Максимович, він випередив свій час.
Maksymovych was way ahead of his time, but nowadays his pictures are highly appreciated.
Його твори подобаються.
The prominent painter created more than 20 paintings over the period between 1912 and 1914. All of them are preserved in the National Art Museum of Ukraine, and no one can tell what other secrets the works of this modernist may be hidden in the canvas.